My God, that can't be. Where did you ever find that? Beatrice's voice shattered the silence of the Hollywood Hills mansion, raw and disbelieving as she lunged forward and seized Sophia's wrist. The pendant swung violently between them, the sapphire butterfly catching the harsh overhead lights like a frantic heartbeat. Sophia stumbled back, eyes wide with shock, the vacuum cleaner cord still tangled around her ankle from moments earlier. Miss Sinclair, let go. You're hurting me. Beatrice didn't release her. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled as they traced the copper chain, tears already streaking down her face in black rivers of mascara. It's impossible, it was stolen, destroyed. Sophia tried to pull away, panic rising. I bought it at a flea market when I was 12. It's just some old... No. Beatrice half sobbed, half shouted, dropping to her knees right there on the hardwood floor scattered with fabric swatches. The unbreakable fashion legend collapsed forward, pressing her forehead against Sophia's hand that still clutched the pendant. Please, tell me you didn't know. Sophia froze, heart hammering. Know what? You're scaring me. Behind them, the door flew open, Marcus bursting in, face pale, phone in hand like he'd been listening the whole time. But Beatrice didn't even look up. Her voice came out in a broken whisper that somehow cut through the chaos louder than any scream. Because if you did, if you've been wearing my greatest mistake around your neck for 25 years on purpose. She finally lifted her tear-soaked face, eyes wild. Then God help us both. Before we continue, I want to speak to you for a moment. If stories like this remind you that kindness still exists, if they make you feel something real in a world that's getting louder and colder, then I'd love to have you here with us. This channel isn't just videos, it's a tiny corner of the internet where good people come together. Where we believe in second chances, in hope, and in humanity. And right now you're early. You're part of the very first people building this family with me. So if you want to grow with us, if you want more stories that touch your heart, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, it supports the channel more than you know. And it tells me that there are still people out there who believe in kindness just as much as I do. If you have subscribed to this channel, I can officially say welcome to the family. The Hollywood Hills mansion didn't just sit on the hillside, it commanded it. Perched high above the sprawl of Los Angeles, the glass and steel estate gleamed under the relentless California sun like a crown jewel, offering unobstructed views of the downtown skyline by day and a glittering sea of city lights by night. Inside, everything ran like a perfectly choreographed runway show. Silent, flawless, invisible. That was the rule for the staff. Be efficient. Be spotless. Be unseen. Sophia Valdez knew the drill by heart. At 25, she'd been cleaning houses in LA for 7 years, but nothing prepared her for the Sinclair estate. Here, maids wore crisp gray uniforms with subtle S embroidery, moved through the halls like ghosts and never, ever, drew attention to themselves. No small talk with the legendary Beatrice Sinclair. No lingering glances at the Oscars lining the shelves or the racks of couture gowns in the open studio. You vacuumed the 10,000 square foot expanse, polished the Italian marble until it reflected the sky, restocked the fresh orchids daily, and vanished before anyone important noticed you were there. The pay was triple what she'd made anywhere else, and Sophia needed every dollar. She was saving for studio time, real studio time, to record the songs she'd been writing since she was 15, scribbling lyrics on napkins during graveyard shifts at coffee shops in Glendale. The pendant around her neck, a quirky copper butterfly with a sapphire center she'd scored for $12 at the Pasadena flea market when she was 12, was her quiet talisman. Her good luck charm. The one thing that stayed with her through evictions, couch surfing, and too many almost. Beatrice Sinclair, on the other hand, lived in a world where nothing was left to luck. At 68, she was American fashion royalty, a self-made billionaire who'd clawed her way out of a Detroit orphanage with nothing but raw talent, relentless drive, and sketches done in stolen moments between factory shifts. Sinclair Couture dressed A-listers on red carpets, launched billion-dollar lines sold in every major department store, and defined trends before the rest of the industry even knew they existed. Beatrice didn't just attend the Met Gala, she set its theme 3 years in advance. She'd survived scandals, hostile takeovers, and ruthless copycats with the same cool detachment she brought to everything. Red lipstick sharp as a blade, posture impeccable, emotions locked away tighter than the vault in her design studio. She hadn't cried in public since she was 19. She didn't plan to start now. That Tuesday afternoon, Beatrice was in the great room reviewing fabric swatches for her spring collection. Silks flown in from Como, cashmeres from Mongolia, when Sophia entered to vacuum. The hum of the machine was soft, deliberate. Sophia kept her head down, moving in straight lines, careful not to disturb the mood boards propped against the wall. Beatrice didn't look up at first. Then the sunlight hit the pendant. It flashed once, a brief, brilliant spark of sapphire against Sophia's collarbone as she reached to dust a high shelf. Beatrice froze. The swatch slipped from her fingers. Her breath caught in her throat like a snag in the finest silk. "My God, that can't be. Where did you ever find that?" The words came out before she could stop them, sharp, trembling, nothing like the composed voice that commanded boardrooms and runways. Sophia shut off the vacuum instantly, startled. She turned, eyes wide. "Miss Sinclair?" Beatrice was already on her feet, crossing the room in 3 urgent strides. She seized Sophia's wrist, not roughly, but with a desperation that made Sophia's heart slam against her ribs. The pendant swung between them, the butterfly catching the light like it was alive. "Miss Sinclair, let go. You're hurting me." Beatrice didn't. Her manicured fingers shook as they traced the copper chain, tears already welling in her eyes, threatening the perfect liner she'd applied that morning. "It's impossible, it was stolen, they said it was destroyed." Sophia tried to step back, confused and a little scared. "I bought it at a flea market when I was a kid. It's just some old thing." "No," Beatrice's voice broke. She sank slowly to her knees right there on the marble floor, the untouchable icon crumbling in real time. She pressed her forehead against Sophia's hand, the one still gripping the pendant, as silent tears began to fall. "Please, tell me you didn't know." Sophia's pulse raced. "Know what? You're scaring me." The estate coordinator, Marcus, appeared in the doorway, face tight with alarm. "Miss Sinclair? Is everything?" But Beatrice didn't acknowledge him. She lifted her tear-streaked face, eyes burning with something between hope and terror. She whispered the words that would unravel everything. "That butterfly. I designed it. 25 years ago. It was my breakthrough piece. My greatest creation." Her voice dropped even lower. "And it was stolen the night my entire future went up in flames." Then, with trembling fingers, she reached for the hidden clasp on the back, the one no one had ever noticed. It clicked open. Inside, etched in microscopic detail, was a code. Not just a signature. A cipher. And when Beatrice saw it, she gasped, a sound so raw it echoed through the silent mansion. Because the code wasn't random. It unlocked digital blueprints to every design that had ever been stolen from her, patterns worth hundreds of millions that had built a rival empire. Sophia stared at her, stunned. I bought it at the Rose Bowl flea market. I was 12. It was just sitting on a table with a bunch of junk. Beatrice looked up at her, tears streaming freely now. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Because I never let that piece out of my sight, until the night someone I trusted took it. And now, 25 years later, it's been hanging around your neck the whole time." Sophia's hand flew to her throat. Her lucky charm. Her constant. The one thing she'd worn every single day. Had never been hers at all. It had been bait. And she'd been wearing it unknowingly for half her life. The next 24 hours turned the Sinclair estate into something between a crime scene and a high-security vault. Beatrice didn't waste a second. By late afternoon, a discreet black van pulled up the private drive. No logos, just tinted windows and 2 forensic jewelers from a firm that usually worked for the FBI's art theft division. They set up in the design studio under bright LED lamps, photographing the pendant from every angle, running spectral analysis on the sapphire, and carefully extracting the micro-engraved plate from the hidden compartment. Sophia watched from the doorway, still in her gray uniform, feeling like an intruder in a world she'd only ever cleaned. She'd been told to stay close, for questions, Beatrice had said, but mostly she just stood there, arms wrapped around herself, trying to process how her $12 flea market find had detonated an empire. Beatrice paced in silence, heels clicking like a metronome. She hadn't changed out of the silk blouse she'd been wearing when everything shattered. Her phone buzzed nonstop, assistants, lawyers, publicists, but she ignored it all. Her eyes never left the pendant. At 6:47 p.m., the lead jeweler looked up. "It's authentic," he said quietly. "The alloy composition, the tool marks, the engraving depth, everything matches your archived records from 2000. This is the original prototype. Beatrice exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 25 years. Then came the second blow. We've started decoding the cipher, the jeweler continued, sliding a tablet across the table. It's not just a signature. It's a compressed key. When we ran it through the encryption standards of the era, it unlocked a cloud archive. Hidden. Still active. The screen filled with folders, hundreds of them. Sketches. Technical flats. Colorways. Seasonal collections that Beatrice had poured her soul into during her breakout years. Collections that had never seen the light of day. Because they'd been stolen. And within months of the theft, eerily similar designs had launched under a rival label, Thorne Atelier, catapulting Lila Thorne, Beatrice's former mentor-turned-bitter competitor, into the stratosphere while Beatrice fought rumors that she'd lost her edge. Beatrice stared at the screen, face unreadable. Sophia finally spoke, voice small. I swear I didn't know any of this. It was just, this thing I found. I liked the butterfly. Made me feel like, I don't know, like I could change into something better one day. Beatrice turned to her, eyes softening for the first time since the meltdown. Tell me about you, Sophia. Really? So Sophia did. She talked about growing up in Glendale with a single mom who worked double shifts at a diner. About discovering open mic nights in Echo Park at 16 and writing songs in the back of city buses. About waitressing, barista gigs, cleaning houses, whatever paid rent while she chased a dream that felt farther away every year. She talked about the pendant being the one constant. Through evictions, through heartbreak, through nights when the music didn't come. Beatrice listened without interrupting. When Sophia finished, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the forensic equipment. I believe you, Beatrice said finally. And I'm sorry you've had to fight so hard for so long. That ends now. But outside the studio door, someone else had been listening too. Marcus Hale, the estate coordinator who'd run the property with military precision for the last 15 years, stood frozen in the hallway. He'd come to check on the situation, but the moment he heard the word authentic, his blood had turned to ice. He backed away slowly, heart pounding, and slipped into his private office at the far end of the guest wing. 25 years ago he'd been 23. Fresh out of Parsons. Beatrice Sinclair's star in turn, hand-picked, trusted, infatuated. He'd worshipped her. And when she gently turned down his clumsy advance after a late-night fitting, something in him had snapped. Not enough to hurt her. Never that. But enough to want to shake her world. He'd paid a pawn $80,000. Money borrowed against his future, to lift the prototype during a chaotic launch party. The plan was simple. Leak it anonymously, create mystery buzz, make Beatrice look careless. Force her to need him. But the pawn had double-crossed him, selling it at the flea market instead of returning it. Marcus had buried the guilt, reinvented himself and somehow, through sheer competence, ended up running Beatrice's own estate. And now the past was clawing its way back. He opened his safe, hands shaking, and pulled out the one piece of insurance he'd kept all these years, a leather-bound ledger. Names. Dates. Wire transfers. The tailor who'd duplicated patterns. The PR fixer who'd planted rumors. Even hints toward the bigger player who'd weaponized the whole thing. He told himself it was protection. Now it felt like a death sentence. Marcus reached for his phone to make a call. Anyone who could still clean this up. But before he could dial, there was a soft knock at the door. Marcus. Beatrice's voice, calm and cold. We need to talk. He froze. On her side of the door, Beatrice held a printed email, one the forensic team had just pulled from an old server backup. A single line from a 25-year-old account. Intern_mhale@sinclaircouture.com. Subject. Prototype secured. Payment instructions attached. Her knuckles were white around the paper. Marcus opened the door slowly. Their eyes met. And in that moment he knew the shadows had finally caught up. I can explain, he started, voice cracking. Beatrice stepped inside and closed the door behind her. You're going to, she said quietly. Every single name in that ledger you're holding. Starting with yours. Marcus looked down. The ledger was still clutched in his trembling hand. He hadn't even realized he'd pulled it out. And just like that, the man who'd kept the estate running flawlessly for 15 years began to unravel, confessions spilling out like thread from a broken spool. He'd orchestrated the theft. Out of love turned poisonous. And he wasn't the only one still breathing who'd profited from Beatrice's pain. The ledger named them all. An underground ring of forgers, fixers, and one legendary name at the very top. The person who'd turned stolen sketches into a billion-dollar betrayal. But that revelation would have to wait. Because right now, Beatrice had a traitor standing in front of her. And for the first time in decades, she let herself feel every ounce of the rage she'd buried. The shadows were done hiding. The Sinclair estate had never felt so alive, and so dangerous. Private investigators arrived in waves. Former FBI art crime specialists, digital forensics experts who'd cracked celebrity hacks, and a quiet ex-LAPD detective who still had friends in every precinct from downtown to the valley. They turned the lower-level conference room into a war room. Whiteboards covered in timelines, red string connecting photos, laptops humming as they traced decades-old bank wires and auction logs. Beatrice ran it like a collection launch. Precise, relentless, no detail overlooked. Sophia, still reeling from the revelation that her lucky charm was the key to a fortune in stolen intellectual property, found herself pulled deeper into the storm. Her uniform was gone. Beatrice had insisted she change into something from the guest closet. Simple black jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Sophia's monthly rent. For the first time, she sat at the table instead of cleaning it. And to everyone's surprise, she belonged there. Late one night, while the team struggled with a corrupted file from an ancient server, Sophia noticed a pattern in the cipher fragments. A rhythmic repetition that reminded her of chord progressions in the songs she wrote. She sketched it out on a napkin, humming under her breath, and within an hour they'd cracked the final layer. Hundreds more designs flooded the screen. Never before seen gowns, accessories, even footwear concepts that would have redefined Beatrice's legacy if they'd launched on schedule. Beatrice watched Sophia with something new in her eyes. Respect, gratitude, and the first flickers of genuine affection. "You're wasted on vacuuming," she said quietly. "From now on you're with me." The trail led outward fast. First, the Pasadena flea market vendor from 2000. A retired prop master who dimly remembered selling some butterfly thing for $20 to a kid with big brown eyes. Security footage was long gone, but his old sales ledger, miraculously preserved for tax purposes, confirmed the date and matched Marcus's wire transfer to the original pawn. Next, the tailor in downtown LA's fashion district. A small atelier that had mysteriously exploded into a major supplier for Thorne Atelier right after the theft. Raids turned up dusty pattern books with Beatrice's unmistakable hand, traced, altered just enough to dodge copyright claims, then mass-produced. Then the PR fixer, now a reputation management consultant in Beverly Hills. Her emails from 2000, recovered from a defunct server, bragged about planting stories. Sinclair's lost her spark. Sources say she's recycling old ideas. Arrests followed quickly. The tailor lawyered up but folded under questioning. The PR woman tried to flee to Palm Springs. Highway patrol pulled her over on the 101 with a suitcase full of cash. Marcus, already in custody after his tearful confession, became the linchpin. Faced with decades in federal prison for conspiracy and theft of trade secrets, he turned state's evidence. Every name in his ledger got a knock on the door. But the deeper they dug, the clearer it became. Marcus had been a pawn himself. Someone with real power had guided the theft, funded the duplication, and orchestrated the slow, deliberate sabotage of Beatrice's reputation while building their own empire on her stolen genius. Beatrice knew who it was long before the final piece clicked into place. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. One rainy afternoon, rare for LA, the lead investigator laid the last document on the table. A 2001 incorporation paper for Thorne Atelier, signed by its founder and CEO, Lila Thorne, Beatrice's former mentor. The woman who'd discovered her in Detroit, brought her to New York, taught her everything about cut, drape, and ambition. The woman who'd smiled at Beatrice's early success, then watched enviously as her protégé eclipsed her. The woman who, when Beatrice announced her breakthrough collection in 2000, had thrown a launch party at the Getty, and used the chaos to have the prototype stolen. Lila had taken the designs, tweaked them just enough, and launched them as her comeback line the following year. Critics called it revolutionary. Thorne Atelier skyrocketed. Lila became the darling of the industry while whispers followed Beatrice. Has she lost it? Is she over? All because her mentor couldn't stand being left behind. Lila Thorne had died 6 years earlier, a sudden stroke at 79, mourned across fashion pages as a legend. Her brand lived on, still raking in billions annually, still selling watered-down versions of Beatrice's stolen vision. Beatrice stared at the incorporation paper for a long time. Then she closed her eyes. "I taught her how to be ruthless," she whispered. "I just never thought she'd use it on me." Sophia reached across the table and covered Beatrice's hand with her own. The room went still. Beatrice opened her eyes, clear, sharp, dangerous. "She may be gone," she said, voice steady as steel, "but her empire isn't. We're taking it all back. Every pattern. Every dollar. Every lie." She turned to the investigators. "File the suits. Civil, criminal where we can. Freeze their assets. I want Thorn Atelier dismantled thread by thread." Then she looked at Sophia. "And when the dust settles, we're going to build something new. Something no one can ever steal again." Outside, the LA rain finally stopped, sunlight breaking through the clouds in dramatic shafts across the hills. Inside, the web was unraveling. And at its center stood two women, one who'd lost everything once and one who'd never had anything to lose, ready to rewrite the entire pattern. The trial became the hottest ticket in Los Angeles. For 9 months, the downtown federal courthouse turned into a circus. Paparazzi camped on the steps, fashion bloggers live tweeting every outfit, network news vans lining Hope Street. Sinclair versus Thorn Atelier heirs wasn't just a lawsuit, it was the fashion industry's reckoning. Beatrice walked into court every day like she was stepping onto a runway, impeccable tailoring, bold colors, chin high. She testified for 3 straight days, voice steady as she laid out 25 years of betrayal, how her mentor had smiled to her face while stripping her future thread by thread. The jury, a mix of Angelenos from teachers to Uber drivers, leaned forward when old sketches were projected side by side with Thorn's original collections. The similarities were undeniable. Marcus took the stand in a cheap suit that hung on his now gaunt frame. He couldn't look at Beatrice as he detailed the theft, the forged patterns, the payoffs. His voice broke when he admitted it had started with a crush that curdled into resentment. The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of reporters' pens. One by one the others fell. The tailor, the PR fixer, the mid-level executives who'd known and stayed quiet for stock options. Guilty verdicts rolled in like thunder. Thorn Atelier's board tried to settle early, $400 million and a public apology, but Beatrice refused. She wanted every cent traced, every lie exposed. In the end, the jury awarded $1.2 billion in damages, the largest intellectual property verdict in fashion history. Thorn Atelier was forced to dissolve. Its flagship stores on Rodeo Drive and Fifth Avenue shuttered overnight. The designs were officially recredited to Beatrice Sinclair, and every garment still in circulation had to carry a discreet tag. Original concept by Beatrice Sinclair, wrongfully appropriated 2000 to 2025. But victory in court didn't heal the deeper wounds. During those long months, something quieter and more powerful happened in the Hollywood Hills estate. Beatrice and Sophia became family. It started small. Late-night takeout from In-N-Out while poring over trial documents, Beatrice teaching Sophia how to read a profit and loss sheet, Sophia playing rough demos of her songs on an old guitar in the sunroom. Beatrice listened, really listened, and started making calls. A producer friend here, a session musician there. Soon Sophia was cutting tracks in a proper studio, Beatrice quietly covering the bills. They launched the Butterfly Beats initiative together, a non-profit foundation seeded with $85 million from the settlement. Its mission was simple but fierce: find raw talent in the overlooked corners of America and give them the runway they deserved. Open calls in community centers from South Central to the Bronx. Scholarships to music and design programs. Mentorships with industry legends who owed Beatrice favors. Sophia became its public face, speaking at launch events in a Sinclair gown that mixed streetwear edge with couture elegance. She talked about growing up without connections, about cleaning houses while dreaming bigger, about how one forgotten pendant had changed everything. And then, 3 weeks after the verdict, came the final twist. They were in the design studio celebrating with champagne when Sophia, now completely at home among the mannequins and fabric bolts, absent-mindedly toyed with the pendant. It had been returned to her after trial, Beatrice insisted. On a whim, she held it up to the strong LED light. Something caught her eye, a hairline fracture in the sapphire she'd never noticed before. "Beatrice, look at this." Under magnification, the fracture wasn't damage. It was deliberate. A final, almost invisible layer of engraving, nanoscale, only visible with the right equipment. Sophia, drawing on the pattern recognition skills she'd honed writing melodies and cracking earlier codes, spotted the sequence first. "It's not just a cipher," she whispered. "It's a royalty key." Beatrice's forensic team confirmed it hours later. In 2000, paranoid about digital theft even then, Beatrice had embedded a unique identifier in her most valuable prototypes. A hidden clause in her original contracts that entitled the bearer of the authenticated prototype to a perpetual 5% royalty on any commercial use of the embedded designs. It had been a safeguard, a legal Easter egg meant to protect her if the physical pieces were ever stolen. No one had known. Not even Lila Thorne. For 25 years, every dress, handbag, and shoe sold under Thorne Atelier's stolen lines had quietly owed 5% to whoever held the original butterfly pendant. The math was staggering. Compounded over billions in sales, adjusted for interest and inflation, the back royalties totaled over $900 million. And because Sophia had legally possessed the authenticated prototype since childhood, proven by flea market records, childhood photos, even an old diary entry about her magic butterfly, the courts ruled the royalties were hers. Overnight, the former maid became one of the wealthiest young women in America. Beatrice didn't fight it. She smiled, actually smiled with her eyes, for the first time in decades. "It was meant to protect my legacy," she told Sophia over coffee the morning the judgment came down. "Turns out it protected yours instead." Sophia stared at the numbers on the screen, numb. "I don't even know what to do with this." Beatrice reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's do it together. Bigger than either of us imagined." Outside, Los Angeles sprawled beneath them, dreams rising and falling every day. Inside, two women, one who'd built an empire from nothing, one who'd survived on nothing, started planning how to give the next generation a real shot. The trial had delivered justice. But the renewal? That was just beginning. 1 year after the verdict, the Wiltern Theater glowed like a beacon in Koreatown. The marquee read, "Butterfly Beats Showcase, sold out." Inside, the Art Deco hall buzzed with energy. Emerging artists from Skid Row Studios, designers from Watts Mentorships, influencers, label execs, and a sprinkling of A-listers who'd flown in just for the night. The initiative had already placed 600 undiscovered talents in residencies, funded 200 independent releases, and lobbied successfully for new federal creator protections, tax credits for indie projects, stronger IP safeguards for emerging artists, even a national database to track stolen work. Sophia stood backstage, heart pounding harder than it ever had at any open mic. She wore a custom Sinclair gown, midnight silk with hand-embroidered butterflies that shifted color under the lights, the pendant proudly at her throat. Beatrice sat front row center, elegant in emerald green, eyes shining with something that looked a lot like maternal pride. The lights dimmed. Sophia stepped into the spotlight. "Good evening, Los Angeles," she said, voice steady and clear. "My name is Sophia Valdez. 2 years ago, I was cleaning houses in this city, writing songs on broken guitars, wearing a flea market pendant I thought was just junk. Tonight, I'm standing here because one woman believed a dream, no matter where it started, was worth fighting for." The crowd erupted. She performed 3 originals, songs about survival, transformation, and finding your wings in the darkest rooms. Then she introduced the initiative's newest projects: AI tools to detect design theft, free legal clinics for indie creators, college scholarships named after forgotten artists. The applause was thunderous. For the finale, she brought out a surprise collaborator, a rising producer from Nashville who'd been quietly remixing some of the initiative's tracks. Ethan Sinclair. Beatrice's 28-year-old nephew, tall, easy smiling, with his aunt's sharp cheekbones and a reputation for spotting hits before they happened. He'd flown in months earlier to help scout talent and stayed, working side by side with Sophia on late-night sessions that stretched into dawn. Their chemistry had been instant. Shared playlists, inside jokes about chord progressions, coffee runs that turned into 3-hour conversations about everything and nothing. The crowd didn't know yet, but those sessions had become something deeper. Ethan joined her on stage, guitar in hand, and they launched into a duet they'd written together, a soaring anthem about stolen sparks becoming wildfires. Halfway through the bridge he stopped playing. The music softened to just Sophia's voice and a single spotlight. Ethan set the guitar down, reached into his pocket, and dropped to one knee. The theater went dead silent. "Sophia," he said, voice carrying through the mic, "I've got a confession to make." He pulled out a small velvet box, and inside, attached to a platinum ring, was a tiny butterfly charm, an exact replica of the original pendant. 6 years ago, I was in LA for a summer internship. I wandered into a dive bar in Echo Park for an open mic night. There was this girl on stage, barely 19, singing like the world had already broken her and she was daring it to try again. I was blown away. I left a 50 in the tip jar and started quietly paying the cover for those nights whenever I could. Anonymously. Because your voice, it stayed with me. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, tears already falling. "I didn't know your name back then," Ethan continued. "I lost track when I moved to Nashville. But I never forgot that girl. And when Aunt Beatrice told me about the maid who'd cracked open a 25-year-old mystery with a flea market necklace, something told me to come see for myself." He smiled, eyes locked on hers. "Turns out the universe has a hell of a remix game. Because the girl who sang her heart out in that smoky bar all those years ago is the same woman standing in front of me now, the strongest, most talented, most beautiful person I've ever known." The crowd was on its feet, phones up, but it felt like they were the only two people in the world. "Sophia Valdez, will you marry me?" She nodded before he even finished, laughing through tears. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. The butterfly charm nestled perfectly beside the original pendant. The theater exploded. Backstage afterward, Beatrice waited with champagne and a smile that finally reached every corner of her face. She hugged Sophia tightly, then Ethan. "I always knew you had good taste," she whispered to her nephew. Then to both of them, "Now go make something beautiful. The world's waiting." In the months that followed, Beatrice stepped back from day-to-day operations at Sinclair Couture, handing the reins to a trusted team while keeping her title as creative director emeritus. She traveled, Paris, Tokyo, Detroit to visit the orphanage that had shaped her, but always came home to LA, to Sunday dinners in the Hollywood Hills with Sophia and Ethan, to mentoring sessions with Butterfly Beats kids who reminded her of herself at their age. Sophia and Ethan launched a joint label under the initiative, Music and Fashion Intertwined, profits feeding straight back into grants for the next wave of dreamers. National laws changed because of their advocacy. Stronger protections against creative theft, funding for arts programs in under-resourced schools, a federal registry for lost and stolen intellectual property. The original pendant was retired to a place of honor at the initiative's new headquarters in downtown LA, a glass case beside a plaque that read, "For every buried spark, let it soar." And every year on the anniversary of the showcase, Sophia and Ethan returned to the Wiltern stage, sometimes with new artists, sometimes just the two of them, reminding everyone in the audience that dreams don't expire. They just wait for the right moment to transform. From a $12 flea market find to a $1 billion reckoning. From a maid and a mogul to a family forged in fire. From stolen designs to a legacy that could never be taken again. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was harmony. And it played on, loud, proud, and unbreakable, across every corner of the City of Angels. What will you rate this story from 0 to 10? And what part of the world are you watching from? Comment your country below. Let's build a global community rooted in kindness and second chances. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone, and inspires us to keep creating more emotional stories of resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being part of our journey. Your presence matters more than you know. Hope to see you again.